Hi, in today's session, we're going to talk about different DB module build options for HDI container in Business Application Studio. Every time we select an option, the deployment behavior is changed in the HDI containers. This process has been same in Web IDE as well. But in today's session, we're going to look at this behavior in BAS. I've prepared a little notes here. You can go through them to understand the different build options. I've listed them as entire DB module, selective build, and force build. So we're going to see the difference between these different module builds and how the behavior is changed when these options were selected. We often notice sometimes you choose to build the entire DB module here, and sometimes you may go into the DB module and select a folder or the file directly and do the build. And sometimes you may just select one file and do the build. And you really don't see the behavior is changed according to every time that you select an option there. So we're going to talk about exactly what happens when these different options were selected for the build. Let's take a look at the first option, that is entire DB module. This is the most common scenario that you perform on every time that you get a new project from a Git repository or something. So what it is going to do, you select a DB module and then start do the build in Web IDE. In Business Application Studio, you can choose to go to the HANA projects and then start doing the deployment, which is same. But what happens in the deployment process for this action is work as a delta deployment. So system is going to compare the file version with the deployed HDI container version and recognize all the differences between the file version to the deployed container version. If the file is changed, or the file is new or deleted, the actions on the deployment side will be taken care accordingly. Let's take a look at the different options that happen when the deployment taken place for these entire DB module option. So I'm going to switch to the nodes. So let's take a case where if the object is changed, so what is going to happen? You'll see that as a pending deployment status for that object, and also that will be tagged for undeployment, and then it gets deployed after. If the object is new, it is still going to show the status as pending deployment, and it gets deployed directly into the container version. In any case, if the object is removed in this entire DB module anywhere, it is going to be tagged for auto deployment, because by default the auto deployment is selected for the for this module. If you make this as false, then the deletion or drop will not happen in the HDI container version. It is just the setting. So, but in general, what happens when you select the entire DB module and build, this is what it is going to happen. And let's take a look at how this is happening in the system. So I'm going to go to the source folder and then go in here and then try to make a change to one of the HDB table. Let's take a change to the address table. I'm going to say nothing big, just remove a space at the end of the SQL and then save it. And then you can see the file is changed. It's going to go to the pending deployment. So at this time, when you run the deployment at the DB module, the system is not going to do anything to the other objects except this particular object, because that's the only one that is tagged for change. If I create a new one, that is also going to come as in pending deployment. Anything removed, that will be taken care as part of undeployment list. So let's take a look at the deployment at the DB module for this particular object. I'm going to say deploy. And then you can see the log that none of the other objects got changed as part of the deployment process here. You can notice that in the log, you see that only address HDB table is being undeployed first as it was changed, and then will be deployed back. You can also notice that when it is being deployed, it is also making a change to the activating or deployment of the dependent objects. For example, in this case, a view is also being deployed. Also, another table data is also deployed. This is just because entire DB module takes care of the dependencies as well. And you can notice that there's none of the other objects that got affected as part of this build process. Let's switch back to the other option, selective build. Sometimes we don't want to do this entire DB module build. There may be multiple tables or views and procedures and calculation views inside the DB module. So we wanted to restrict our build process to certain objects, maybe 2 or 3 or a folder. In that case, the behavior is different than how the entire DB module deployment works. The first difference you can identify that is when you do the selective deployment on a folder, it's not going to take care of the other dependencies for that particular object. So it's going to just look for that particular, even though the other dependent objects are having problems and errors, it's still going to proceed with the deployment of those selected objects. That's the major difference that you can have. So when you're doing the selective build, you make sure you are not really making the consistency for the entire, you're not checking the consistency for the entire DB, which will be done later when the entire your work is completed. So you can do this way that you keep doing the selective builds until you complete your work. You finish your work and then make sure you're doing the entire DB module build as well, so that those changes didn't affect the other dependent objects in the DB module. Let's take a look at these cases where the selective build happened. If the selected object is new, it will be deployed directly. And if the selected object is changed, it will be undeployed and deployed after, just same way as the previous one. And no change, no action takes place on that. So this process is simplifying by giving you an option to choose only some objects for your deployment, and with the exception that it is not going to take care of the dependencies. Okay, how do you do the selective build in the system is just going to the particular files, and then you can select by pressing the control or command, and then just right click and do the deployment in BAS. In Web IDE, you probably select those options and then right click and select build. That will be the same action as deploy all selected files in BAS. I can do that. So nothing changed because these two files were already there. So no action taken place. So if something new, it will be deployed. And then you can also notice that it's not going to be undeployment taken place because it's not looking at the entire DB module here when you do the selective build. So you may not have those undeployment actions taken place when this particular for the deleted files here. And switching back to the last one, force build. What is it, force build? You probably would have not seen or not, you would have done this multiple times, but you would have not noticed that this is a different behavior for a deployer when the force build is done. So how do you do the force build? Sometimes you may want to deploy a file purposefully, even though there is no change to it. So if there is no change to it, when you do the entire DB module or selective build, it's not going to do any undeployment and deployment. It's simply ignores that particular object if there is no change. But still, in some cases, we wanted to redeploy that object, even though there is no change to it. At that case, we do the selective. So we do the force deployment. How do we do? We just select and then click on the deployment button, or in the Web IDE users select that, right click and select build, which is like a forced deployment. So we would have done this multiple times without noticing this is a forced deployment. So anytime when you choose to do the deployment or build on a particular object purposefully, or not purpose, or by wantedly doing, that is considered as a forced deployment. If this file is changed, that is fine. It is going to undeploy it, deploy it back. Even though it is not changed, it's still going to undeploy and redeploy. So that's kind of the behavior for individual file deployment or build. One thing you may notice here is that if you select one or two files, or sorry, two or more files, it is going to behave as selective build, which we talked in the previous scenario. So that's about these different behaviors when you're clicking on something on a folder or a file or an entire DB module. The process of the deployment is different. So that's what I wanted to make you aware of this process and get going with your build and deployment process. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in another session. Take care. Bye-bye.